Okay, latest case, Charlotte, North Carolina. An illegal immigrant, been deported multiple times, had a criminal record, confessed to stabbing a man on the same train where 4 months ago a Ukrainian woman was violently stabbed to death by a homeless man. It's a horrible, horrible coincidence. It's terrible. And of course, one example like this is too many, of course. But they are exceptions to the rule about people who are here illegally. Okay? The crime statistics just do not justify the idea that illegal or undocumented immigrants in this country, migrants in this country, are the crime problem or are even a significant criminal threat. All right? But look, politically, I get how powerful just one example of this is. Okay? Now, here's my counter. If you're going to have masked men running around the country, disrupting communities, all right, making people angry, causing protests, pulling people out of jobs, pulling people out of schools, pulling people out of homes, making mistakes and grabbing citizens, all right, and holding them and getting rid of them, often with not the kind of due process we would have expected, you better be really effective. And that's why the data matters so much. And that's why I keep asking for it every time Tom Homan says, look, I look at the data every day. I see it. I see it. Okay. Now data has finally come out. The immigration teams, are they going after bad hombres or the wrong hombres? Here is their data. Nearly 1/3 of the people they have arrested have no criminal record. Again, nearly 1/3 have no criminal record. And no, the counter is not, well, yeah, they do. They're here illegally. They had an order of removal. That doesn't count. It's that you were going after people who didn't just come here illegally out of desperation for a better life, but you're going to grab the ones that are doing bad things while they're here. That was the sell. Okay? This is why I ask for the data all the time. Is less than 1/3 enough of a justification for how they're doing this? Let's debate. Former acting deputy DHS secretary in the first Trump administration, Ken Cuccinelli, and a former DHS chief of staff, also from Trump's first administration, Miles Taylor. Ken, it's good to see you. Miles, it's good to see you. Again, I get it. You're not here legally. That means that you can be removed by law enforcement. I get it. But the way ICE is doing it is so aggressive, so disruptive. Don't you think this data should be more compelling than it is?
So, Chris, I think you're starting with an awful lot of wrong premises there. I'm amazed that only 1/3 don't have an additional criminal record. I mean, let's say, and we don't need to debate the raw number, but let's say there's 20 million illegals here total over our lifetimes. Maybe 500,000 roughly have committed additional significant crimes, talking like DUI and up, and all the way up to murder, of course. And that's about 2.5% of that number, of the 20 million. Of course, more people who haven't committed additional crimes in addition to entering the country illegally are going to be the majority of people removed. And the president didn't say
it's not what you, but that's not what he promised. Yes, he did. He said we're going after bad hombres, Ken.
Let me finish with the most
Go ahead, make your point.
important
Make your
The
point.
most important
Make your point.
the
Make your
president
point.
said during his campaign was these bad hombres were going to be the priority. And they have been the priority, and the data shows that.
All right. Miles, I don't agree with Ken. I believe this shows that you're grabbing a lot of people for things that don't justify how they're grabbing them. What do you think?
Yeah, and look, I even think the president agrees with you, Chris. I mean, that's why we saw a couple of months ago Donald Trump backtrack on hospitality workers and farm workers because he was hearing from his friends. And this is not what he envisioned either. I really don't. I mean, Ken knows this as well as me. There's a war inside this administration of different perspectives on this. And some of those were the same people who were there when Ken and I were there. Some have the view that every single human being who came into this country, regardless of how they came in, if they didn't get legal status right at the front door, we got to round every single one of them up and throw them out. Some very powerful voices in the White House who, regardless of what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail, that's what they want to do. There are others in this administration who thinks we really should prioritize criminal aliens. When Ken and I were at DHS, we very specifically defined criminal aliens, not as people who came in as illegally, but people who were also convicted of crimes. It's all over the place. I'm sure Ken testified to it. I testified to it. That is the definition that we were using. And this administration sold the public on that being the focus this term. Chris, when you look at the data, you can't think anything other than, well, that was a lie, because one-third of those people are not meeting that definition. That's just a lie. It's a total bait and switch.
All right, go ahead.
You know, would
Go ahead,
three
Ken.
quarters
You
of
hear
them
the criticism.
having committed additional crimes? You guys have set an artificial bar. This is not an honest debate. 2/3 of those removed, according to your reporting, have additional criminal records. That's about 150,000 people. That's 1/3, almost a third of all of the illegals who have committed additional crimes. You started this report segment, Chris, with the report about the Honduran, in Charlotte. And you commented about the crime rates. Those blue areas aren't reporting who's here illegally. Those numbers are artificially low, and every crime committed by someone here illegally is one that should never happen. It isn't about crime rates, it's about crime victims.
I know, but Ken, that is not a fair premise, okay? I agree with you.
Very fair
utopian, utopian, but we have always had people entering the country illegally. And it's not just an absence or an omission of data that is the suggestion. Every measure that's been done over the last quarter century of the impact of undocumented people in this country is that criminally, they are transgressing at a lower percentage than citizens, and that they do a lot of good things for their communities despite how they entered the wrong way. This is not new until you guys decided to change the narrative. And I get that the cases in Carolina look terrible. I get that one is too many. But Ken, this is not getting bad hombres.
There's a lot more harm than
but what are they doing?
Harm.
What are they doing? They're fueling our agro economy.
The commerce wing of the GOP that's always wanted to flood the Bushites who've wanted to flood America with illegals because it keeps their wages down. It depresses Americans' wages by flooding the low end of the labor market. Keeps prices down.
Keeps prices down,
Is
Ken.
that okay with you? Is that okay with you? The only kind of good inflation is the kind that pays a fellow citizen who's working hard to support their family and obeying the law. And you just said it's better to undercut those people, and I disagree. And so does the president think.
Ken, hold on. I'm going to go back to you in a second, Miles, but hold on, Ken. Give me a break, okay? That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is you guys are dealing with a pricing problem.
Parts of this argument out.
No, I'm not doing it anything out of convenience because I got to tell you, I see this as agonizing. I don't like that law enforcement now has a black eye because of how ICE is being perceived around the country. And I get why they want to mask up. I also think being masked up is a horrible look for communities to see law enforcement looking like a Gestapo. I hate what's happening here. And it's not because I want illegal immigration. It's not because I don't believe in borders. What I'm saying is to put all these people in the same basket as if they were a bunch of rats on a ship has never been fair, Ken. And now this data suggests that you're just grabbing people as you can and not going after people that are actually threats to communities.
It says
That's
the
my
exact
point.
opposite. I just disagree.
All right, fine. We disagree. Miles, last point to you.
Well, look, I would just say this. The solution I think we've all known in Washington for decades on how to solve this is some kind of grand bargain on comprehensive immigration reform. My frustration has always been that there was that opportunity. If anyone was ever going to be able to do it, Donald Trump had a Nixon goes to China moment in the first term to go make that happen. But he couldn't focus on it. He was so obsessed with things like the design of the border wall. I don't know if Ken's meetings with him were like this, but focused on telling us how sharp the spikes needed to be and how much of it he wanted to repaint and what color the paint was going to be, that he would not focus on going to do a comprehensive immigration reform deal. And now we are seeing the consequences of that. Is the only option he feels like he's got is just to go send everyone out of the country. That's a mistake. I think it was a historic missed opportunity.
Paul Ryan and the Chamber of Commerce wing of the GOP undercut that opportunity that Miles, I think, is accurately describing, not Donald Trump. The Bob Goodlatte bill was a successful bill. It got 193 Republicans, but not the Speaker of the House, because he was actively undermining the president's agenda.
Ken, I appreciate you making the case, as always. Miles, as well. Hey, look. We all can disagree here. That's the beautiful thing, but it'll never be done with personal animus. We'll fight on ideas like we should. Ken, be well. Miles, you too. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.